Hello, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Crash Ball podcast number 10. I am flying completely solo tonight, so we're just going to burn through the slides as quick as we can. Try not to get stuck on too many issues. Right, so we've got a lot of catching up to do. So this is where Crash Ball 10 should have happened, and we had another 1 point. Oh my goodness, what is happening moment. The Springboks did it. They retained the William Webb Ellis Trophy, so not much more to say about that. Everybody knows by this time. So our Super Brew leaderboard was topped by a certain person named Scooter, and as you can see, I didn't feature there, so don't put too much weight onto my prediction skills. Right, so I want to talk about a few things. The red cards, the bunker, the referees and the TV referees injecting themselves too much maybe in the games in the World Cup. It's something that everybody has talked about. My opinion on this is yes. I think that people do have a tendency sometimes to get themselves into the spotlight when they should be more along the sidelines and be the supporting act instead of the main feature. So I thought that was something that World Rugby needs to look at. My opinion also on the red card, 20 minutes and a replacement instead of being completely sent off the field. I think that we can also take some pages out of the book of, we as World Rugby can learn something from FIFA, where a second yellow card in consecutive games or a second yellow card in the tournament means an immediate red card, just to get rid of repeat offending, strategic offending. So I think one of the reasons why the red card is a send-off in rugby is because that's supposed to be a transgression that can only be sanctioned by complete removal from the game. I think the red card you're not allowed to come back and you're playing with 14 or 30, you're not allowed to replace the player. It has a place. It needs to take another form. The criteria, I think, for a red card should be absolutely abhorrent behavior, and a red card should basically put you on the route to a career ban. That's my opinion. I think for the transgressions that we saw in the World Cup, a 20-minute red card, player off the field for 20 minutes, and the player may be replaced. So maybe that's the switch that can come in there, where the referees can then decide in the bunker or whatever. If the referee on the field sees something that warrants a red card and they go through all those mitigating procedures and it is a red card, then there can be another process while the player is off the field to decide whether or not the player can come back on or needs to be replaced by somebody else. But 20 minutes max, I think 15 minutes for a red card. The type of offenses we saw in the World Cup, people accidentally clashing heads, I think that was a bit harsh for the red card thing. So that's me for the red card. Right, then the Tier 2 nations. We saw so many inspirational performances in that World Cup in 2023. Georgia, Tonga, Samoa, these guys need to play. And we talked about this in the previous podcast, that the Tier 2 nations perform better in their third, fourth games. They tend to scare the big teams more, or be more competitive in the like versus like, Tier 2 versus Tier 2 pool games. So we need more competitions for the Tier 2 nations. We all know what it takes to grow a sport. It's eyeballs, it's audience, it's money. So not too much more I will say about that, right? I would like to see the promotion relegation tier going maybe to a third tier, where we have these competitions like the European Challenge Cup, where the teams get relegated from the Champions Cup, and we can maybe add a third tier after that for teams being relegated and promoted into that tier, so that the tier 1 and tier 2 nations share more interaction in competitions. And then lastly, for this slide, it's going to be very hard for me to watch another World Cup in another country. France has hosted it twice now since we hosted it, we being South Africa. So when will it be our turn to host the Rugby World Cup again? That's the question I'm asking. Let me know in the comments what you think. I promise this time I will read the comments, and we'll see what we get from that. So the Investec Champions Cup, as it's known in South Africa, I'm at least in the top 10 there at number 9. And so thank you very much for everybody participating in that. The pool code is EELSWEEN. I love these Super Brew pool names. They seem to have some kind of cool name generating algorithm that I'd love to examine. Right, so just going through the results that we saw in the Champions Cup so far since the Crash Ball 9 podcast. And I think the one that stands out for me here is the Stormers win over Stade Rochelet, as they would like to be called, but La Rochelle, aka the winning kick by Manie Libbok. So eat that, you Manie Libbok haters. He kicked the winning points to get the Stormers the win over the defending champions. That was the highlight for me in that second round. The Bulls, obviously, this past weekend, getting rid of the Bristol Bears, giving them an outside chance. The Bristol Bears, that is, an outside chance of actually making it to the playoffs. The Bulls still in strong contention for qualification. We'll have a look at the log in a moment. So coming up on the 19th to the 21st of January, that is this upcoming weekend, the Bulls at home to Bordeaux-Bègles, and Stade Français Paris will host the Stormers. Now, this is interesting. The pool where the Bulls are, I've indicated there, they have the 8 teams that qualify for the quarterfinals. The Bulls still have a chance, and I need some help here because there are 6 teams in the pool, as you can see, but the rounds only go up to 4. So maybe I'm wrong. I'd like to know why there are only 4 rounds and 6 teams in the pool, because there should be a 5th game so that everybody plays everybody. But anyway, I'll have a look into that some more and come back to you on that one. And the same in pool 4, where we find the Stormers. They are also don't have the Q next to their name yet. But if you look at the points of the qualifying teams, the Stormers and the Bulls still are in there. The Bulls definitely still in there with their destiny in their own hands. I'm not so sure about the Stormers, so we'll keep an eye on that. Right, so there's the United Rugby Championship leaderboard, which is simultaneously happening with the Investec Champions Cup, which is a very nice problem to have for rugby fans. Now we don't have a complicated Super 14 or Super 18 or Super 20 or Super Rugby thing to contend with. We now have 2 entirely separate competitions with 2 entirely different sets of teams, and good luck keeping up with that if you're a South African fan. So we're going to help you with that. These are the results from the rounds that we didn't cover in our last podcast. So that's just gives you an idea of how long we just slacked off and didn't care about our audience, but we are back and we're sorry. Right. So the one thing I wanted to talk about here with the URC was the Sharks. And the Sharks, that game against the Lions, where they scored almost no points in the second half, and they had the game in the bag, and then Boeta Chamberlain misses the kick. That's going to be what everybody talks about. But the Sharks were just, what is going on there? If you're a Sharks fan, let us know. What do you think? It's just unbelievable to think that you have those caliber of players, those guys that are running out for the Sharks. And Siya Kolisi is still not even in the team, but they've got Mapimpi, they've got Lucanio Am, they've got Springboks that are first choice Springboks. They don't have Springboks that are old and over the hill like the Bulls do, or Springboks that are sort of on the side and not sure of their position like the Stormers do, especially in the back line. They've got some solid forwards there, but the Sharks have managed to get players in, and then they put 40 minutes together where the only score they managed to manufacture was a kickable penalty, and because Boeta Chamberlain missed it, they lost at home to the Lions. So that was, for me, the biggest talking point, highlight of the season so far as the South African teams in the URC are concerned. So the Sharks, man, they look good in that first half. And the Lions, well done for coming back. They've shown that they can still, that union can still put a team together even if it doesn't have any big stars in it. So well done to them. So then we are moving on to the fixtures there for you. I'm just going to skip over this because everybody's obviously going to watch or follow wherever you do. Long time to wait for the next URC game, but once again, the Sharks disappointing their fans. I thought that was a much better performance by the Sharks than the one against the Lions, but they still came up short. It was an away game, so it wasn't as bad as the loss to the Lions in Durban. The home games, if you lose your home games in any kind of professional rugby competition, it's really, really tough. 8,000 kilometers, 25-degree temperature swing most of the time, so it's really tough if you lose your home games. Right, so that's the URC top 8. So we've got the Bulls and the Stormers there. The Bulls have a game in hand somehow. They need to get a bit higher up to make their position a bit more solid, but it's a long competition. There's a lot of breaks for the Champions Cup. Just keeping an eye on the positions of the South African teams. And then the bottom half, the Sharks, they're right at the bottom. And the Lions, they can still go up maybe to the top 8. They've still got a chance. They also have a game in hand. And once again, the Sharks, the whole Sharks team, just one win in this competition and the one win in the Champions Cup. Right. So that's all I wanted to talk about. I would just like to say some thank yous here. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, follow this channel or this profile or this X bot or whatever they call it. Make sure you get notified when anybody on this channel goes live. There's the Cheap Seats football podcast, soccer podcast, and the Full Quota cricket podcast on these channels as well. Wherever you're watching this, please keep an eye out for those other podcasts that happen. If you want to advertise, please contact me at Ozmaster on X, or you can send an email to mpho@1wsr.com. That's mpo, mpho@1wsr.com. And the same applies if you want to join this podcast team. I want to thank the whole team, the One World Sports Radio, the team that helps me get this podcast together. It's pretty nice to have the support. And then, of course, most importantly, the viewers and listeners, you guys out there listening to this and watching this, thank you very, very much. The numbers are amazing. You guys are awesome. Please send to your friends and comment. Let us know what you think, and we'll be back with you shortly. Probably another week or two, but we'll never have a bigger gap than we had just now. Thank you very much. Good night, good morning, goodbye. Stay safe.